Hi everyone, this is Tania Ahmed, and today I am thrilled to be sharing a project for graphics using their new substrate called Opaque Black Craft Plastic. Today I am going to be creating a mixed media tag using a variety of mediums, which you will see in the video today. So to start off, I have cut down a piece of craft plastic down into 3.5 inches by 6.5 inches, and I have cut some notches into the side, and I'm going to punch a hole towards the top to create my tag shape. And to start off, I am going to be adding some bits of an old map onto my tag with some gel medium, some matte gel medium, so that when it dries it doesn't show up as too glossy on the surface. So craft plastic is a synthetic medium, so which means that it won't absorb any of the liquids or mediums that you add over the top, which is perfect for artists or crafters like myself who like to do a lot of mixed media work in their projects. So I've added the old map onto my tag, and I'm going to let it set it aside to dry a little bit as well, so that the gel medium dries completely. And I am going to go over some parts of the tag with some black gesso. You can use some chalk acrylic paints as well, but I like using black gesso because it gives paint or any mediums that I apply over the top something to grab onto. And I'm going to use the same technique of applying paints. I'm using some chalk acrylics here with a brayer as well, just very, very lightly. I'm not pressing the brayer onto my tag too hard. I start with very light strokes, and as soon as the paint has applied on to the tag, then I can apply with a bit more pressure. Before moving on to my next color, um, I dried it a little bit on a lower heat setting with my heat tool, and I applied the second color and I let it dry. The key to working, creating mixed media projects is to keep drying in between. For my next layer, I'm going to be using some spray paints. I'm using Distress Oxide spray paints, and I covered the top half of the tag so that I wouldn't get an overspray towards the top, and whatever spray was left onto my stencil I used as a stamp on the top half of the tag. And I lifted some of the wet spray with my kitchen towel, and I let it dry with a heat tool as well. For my next layer, I'm going to be using some texture paste. As you can see, I am adding multiple layers, some very wet, some quite dry, but the surface, the synthetic paper, doesn't buckle at all, which is the beauty of working on a synthetic surface. You can pretty much keep adding multiple layers and it just won't buckle. I am adding the texture paste um, on the top part and the bottom half of the tag, and before the texture paste dries I am sprinkling some fluorescent pink embossing powder onto the wet texture paste, flicking off the excess onto my scrap piece of paper, and then heat setting it. Before I heat set it, I am just flicking off some of the embossing powder in parts where the paint and the texture paste was still a bit wet, just to get a bit more of a distressed look. So I am gently heat setting it. You will find that the uh, opaque black craft plastic does warp a little bit if you put too much heat on it, but I was able to flatten it out before it cooled down completely. Now I'm using some Posca markers, which are paint markers, to add some scribbles, basically some thoughts about how I was feeling in that moment. And the paint from the pen goes on really smoothly over the opaque black craft plastic film, as well as over the paint as well. And I think it adds a nice pop of blue against that very busy background. So I've taken some die cut words, and this is something that I like to use on top of a background that might be quite busy. So I like to keep my sentiments quite clean and simple, so that they stand out against the background. So I layered the two die cuts up so that the black was sort of peeking out a little bit against that white. And I've set it aside to dry. In the meanwhile, I'm taking some white acrylic ink, and using a fan brush, I am adding some splatters all over the tag, and then gently heat setting it with a heat tool. Again, if it buckles a little bit, I can just bend it right back into shape with my hands before it cools down. And to finish the tag off, I am adding my sentiment on to my tag with some gel medium, because that is a very textured background, and I want to make sure that my sentiment stays on there nice and flat. To finish the tag off, you can add some ribbon, and here is a finished look at the mixed media tag. I hope that you enjoyed this video and that you give this technique a go. If you would like some more information about graphics arts and their products, please visit the Graphics Arts website. Thanks for watching. Bye!